I was drawn to the technical challenge. I mean, as a nerd, I love this thing. Huge haystack, right? Haystack is growing 10x bigger every year or two, and you still got to find the same number of needles. And by the way, it's just a lot of different kinds of hay now, right? It's not just email, it's Slack chats and it's Zoom recordings. And that's a fascinating problem.
Today on Law Next, a return visit with AJ Shankar, founder and CEO of cloud-based e-discovery company Everlaw. AJ was a guest on this podcast back in April 2019, and since then, you might say a thing or two has happened with Everlaw, not the least of which is the announcement earlier this month of a $202 million Series D funding at a valuation of over $2 billion, making Everlaw one of the few legal tech companies to join the elite ranks of unicorn status. So it seemed like a good time to invite AJ back and catch up with him and with Everlaw. This is Bob Ambrogi, and you're listening to Law Next, the podcast that features the innovators and entrepreneurs who are driving what's next in law. Before we get to today's interview, a quick note about the sponsors whose generosity makes this show possible. Busy lawyers need solutions that do the work for them in the background. Practice Panther is designed to help lawyers automate all aspects of their firm. The all-in-one platform offers a clean interface to manage your matters, track time, process e-payments, send documents for e-signature, and send business text messages to clients. Learn why Practice Panther is the preferred solution for tens of thousands of lawyers at practicepanther.com. Now on to today's interview. AJ, welcome back to Law Next.
Thanks for having me, Bob. Always a pleasure to chat.
Always a pleasure to speak with you. I actually posted on Twitter or something the other day. I'd come across a photo standing. We were all at a conference. You, Jack Newton, and
Charlie
Moore, a rocket lawyer. Thank you. And I thought it was kind of funny to see the three of you together. I think it was about 2 years ago that we were at that conference, because so much has changed for all of you over those 2 years since then, and a couple of unicorns in the bunch there. So very interesting.
Yeah, that's a great find. I remember that conference. I think that was a Harvard symposium somewhere. I think it was 2019. I think you're right.
Yeah.
It was one of those, one of the, probably the last travel for work trips I did before things got locked down, the following year. So,
yeah. So is that right? Have you started to travel again, or are you still locked down?
Well, personally, yeah. So definitely this summer, once we got vaccinated, we've been starting to visit our families and so on, and that's been great. And my two older kids just got their shots; they just got opened up, so we're really kind of broadening that out and really excited about that. But for work, there just isn't a lot of stuff to go to just yet, right? I think some of the events earlier this year, we intentionally didn't have much of a presence. I think I'm gonna aim to be at Legal Tech New York, so I'm very excited about that. We're definitely all going to be there in force, but hoping that the new year also brings with it a safe environment that we can all get to see each other again. That'd be really fun.
Yeah, I hope so. Will you be exhibiting at Legal Tech?
Yeah, we'll have the whole booth thing and all that. Absolutely.
Good. Well, let's start with the latest news. I would encourage anybody listening to this podcast to go back and listen to our interview from 2 years ago, because we kind of went through why you started the company and the history of the company, and did a pretty good job, I think, of talking it through from its founding in 2011 up until 2019. But a lot has happened over the last couple of years, including this latest funding round, which I think, if I've got it right, brings your total funding for the company to close to $300 million at this point. So let me ask, what does this mean? What does this mean for your customers? What does this mean for Everlaw?
Yeah, that is a great question. Can be addressed on many layers. I would say
let's start with the company. Let's start with breaking it down for why you wanted to raise this money and what it means for you.
Yeah, well, I would say, what it means for the company is inextricably related to what it means for our clients, right? I mean, that's the whole purpose of what we're trying to do. So I really view them hand in hand. I would say, for the company, it's a milepost, and I think that's a great milepost to get to. But it's not in itself anything more than that, right? It's a measure of where we've come, but also what we want to do in our ambitions. And so the money, of course, is going to be really helpful in serving our customers more in all the dimensions that they care about, right? So absolutely going to accelerating product development, broadening the surface area that we're going to try to cover there as well, going to more robust customer support and success efforts, everything from training and support to better relationship, experiences that they're going to have, continued innovation across, the entire experience of using Everlaw. And then for us as a company, further growth, right? It's going to help fuel sales and marketing efforts and business development efforts and, things like that. So it's really a little bit of everything. The mandate is kind of doing more of what we've been doing and better and faster. So as cliched as that is, that's really how we think about it. And we're really just lucky to have found really great partners in TPG who share, the vision that we have with where we're going, and obviously are willing to put their money behind that. And so hopefully we're excited to partner with them as we grow.
Yeah. Do you see any significance in the valuation of the company, and if significance either for yourself or significance for the legal tech industry more broadly?
Well, I'll just say, look, it's a number, right? It's a market-driven rate. And so I guess I would say it's exciting that the market values legal tech in this way. And I think hopefully that's exciting for any legal tech company, that folks are interested in what we're doing and they see the opportunity for transformation. They see the magnitude of the impact you could have, right? And I think that's great. I would say even when I started 10 years ago, that was not the case. When we raised our Series A round 5 years ago, I didn't talk to a single VC that had any legal tech investments or certainly any legal thesis until we got to Andreessen, and we were their first one. But it was a fortunate meeting with Steven Sinofsky, who had actually dealt with the law in his prior operational experience that made us appealing to them. But it's that things have changed dramatically since then. Not just us, but all the other great companies out there that have gotten to this scale and beyond. I think that's a testament to just the burgeoning interest in legal tech, and I'm very excited about that. I hope that the next generation, so to speak, of legal tech entrepreneurs has easier access to capital and more support, to grow to where they want to go to.
Yeah, you were the first legal tech company that Andreessen invested in. They've since invested in a number of others, so that was significant. So, go back to that other part of that question of exactly what this means for customers. I hear you saying, product development and greater support and success, but can you put that in more tangible terms in terms of what customers should expect, how this might impact their experience going forward?
Yeah, well, it's tough because we have a very robust roadmap, and that hasn't changed. Actually, we're just trying to do all the stuff we want to do. But we think we're at the sweet spot at the intersection between enterprise grade functionality and security, and then the cloud native, user first, consumer grade look and feel. Right, and that is there are vendors that have one and not the other, and vice versa. And I think we like to think that we bridge that gap. And I think for us, that is very exciting. And I think that's what the industry needs, right? We're building what we think the industry needs, obviously, right? Is not only the ability to get into the system and learn it quickly and hit the ground running, which I think is now an expectation for any kind of cloud or SaaS software, but also the deep devil in the details style functionality that's going to let you deal with all the crazy file types you've got and all the production specifications you've got to deal with. And then on top of all that, all the communication and collaboration and work product needs you have. So this money is really in support of that thesis. Like when I talk about both that ease of use and the depth of functionality, there's so many more things that we think we can do to support that, from more sophisticated artificial intelligence to more robust processes for getting data in and out, to especially, I think, more collaborative tools around how people work and where they spend their time working. So as you know, that Storybuilder suite of tools that we've had out has been really impactful for us. I think we're seeing a bunch of other vendors now go down a similar path. But we think that's a critical component of getting this right, is not just here are the needles in the haystack, but how are you working together to meet your goals, right? What's the work product you got to deliver at the end of the day?
Yeah. And that was one of your major product announcements over the past year. Just for the benefit of anybody listening who's not familiar with it, you want to just kind of give us the nutshell of what Storybuilder is?
Yeah, so we have Storybuilder is a suite of collaborative tools for kind of post-discovery work. So when you found your needles in the haystack, we want to help you knit together a story, right? So that is, creating a timeline, a legal writer where you can actually introduce and incorporate your evidence into your arguments, right in line, right? As if you had a Word doc, but you had your evidence right there. And so people have written, over 25 million words in our Story Builder Drafts tool. It's all real-time collaborative, so you can work together at the same time with other people. Depositions, uploading transcripts, creating exhibit lists, all that whole workflow. So that's a tool we had baked into Everlaw. And what we announced earlier this year is that we actually have spun it out and we have a standalone tool. So if you just want to use Story Builder for free without using Everlaw at all, you can use it at no charge. You can just upload your documents straight in from whatever discovery platform you've been using it and get to work collaborating on all your post-discovery workflows. So that was one of the big product announcements we had this year, yeah.
Yeah. I always think of Story Builder as extending e-discovery platform farther right along the EDRM spectrum. Is that a fair way to think about it?
Absolutely. So we really think it's pushing past, if you look at the EDRM, there's the last box is presentation.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that goes on there, right? And so we actually think that you can unpack all of that and think about what's the work product you need to create once you found those needles all the way down. And so we're very interested in pushing down to the right. And as you know, we're also pushing back up to the left. We just also released a legal holds tool, also incorporated in the platform, no extra charge, allows you to manage your legal holds, tie them to custodians, of course, and tie those custodians to uploads in the platform. So putting all those pieces together is what I mean kind of when we talk about expanding the surface area. We think there's a lot of value in providing all that functionality under one roof in a really integrated fashion, which really decreases the stress level of our clients and makes it much easier for them to do what they want to do.
Yeah. I'm speaking with AJ Shankar on the occasion of his company's Series D funding round of $202 million at a valuation of $2 billion, which makes it one of the few unicorns in the legal tech industry. As you've heard AJ say, Everlaw has already been extending the capabilities of its platform both further right and further left on the EDRM, which is the electronic discovery reference model used in the legal industry to map the discovery process. But what about extending beyond discovery? Does AJ see that in Everlaw's future? We'll find out when we return, but first, this word from the sponsors who make this podcast possible. Paradigm believes that when perspectives shift, possibilities unfold. Paradigm offers 4 leading legal software solutions that help you manage, automate, and grow your firm. The practice management platforms Practice Panther, Bill for Time, and Meriscase, and the online payment solution HeadNote. Learn why more than 40,000 lawyers trust its products to shift the paradigm of how they practice law. Find out more at joinparadigm.com. Welcome back to Law Next. I'm speaking today with AJ Shankar, founder and CEO of Everlaw, about the company's Series D funding of $202 million. Last year, after the company raised $62 million in a Series C round, I interviewed one of the investors, Jesse Wedler, a partner in Capital G, who said that part of what interested him in Everlaw's technology was its potential to extend well beyond e-discovery and to, quote, create a functional cloud of the entire legal space. So does Shankar see the potential for Everlaw to expand beyond e-discovery? And what else does the future hold for the company? We discuss those questions and more in the second half of Law Next. In 2020, probably about a year and a half ago when you did your Series C, I spoke with Jesse Wedler, partner at Capital G, and I think he was on your board. Is he still on your board? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I did an interview with him, and one of the points he made is that he sees Everlaw as a technology that has the capacity to extend beyond e-discovery. Do you see it that way?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I think about if I think about how legal professionals spend their time, so first in the space of, let's just say, litigation and investigations, let's think about all the folks that work in that space. So by the way, it might be tempting to just focus on the attorneys, but of course there's a rich ecosystem there, right? There's paralegals and lit support folks and IT folks, and I want to make sure those folks are included too, all of those folks. So if you think about the life cycle of a litigation and where they spend their time, there is an intense 6 to 8 months of discovery, but it's a good question is, what about the rest of the time? What about the rest of the people? How are they spending that time? When we look into that, that's where we discover all those aspects of workflow and work product and communication and collaboration that are going on every single day. And so we think our mandate is to make sure that all of those folks are well served in all of those needs, right? Not merely the discovery needs, but in how they do their work every day. And so that's really how we think about what we're trying to build.
Yeah. But does that mean that the platform begins to extend? Well, what does that mean? I mean, how does that take it beyond e-discovery?
Yeah. So first, as I said, moving downstream past discovery to story builder, right? There's more lawyering to be done and legal work to be done. Then we have a whole rich set of tools that are layered right into the platform, right? That are not specifically the act of discovery, but in the way people work. So we have a very rich messaging tool in the platform. You can share anything with anybody. And people do that all the time. They shared hundreds and hundreds of thousands of bits of work product in the platform with each other. And then when you think about the work product angle, that drafting tool, that writing tool actually lets you create things in the platform. So what can that be? That can be like, okay, I'm working on I'm writing a motion or a brief. I want to inject this piece of evidence in there. And that's a straightforward way to use it. But people use this for all kinds of things. So we have folks that create, coding rubrics in there. We have folks that plan their entire week out. Their whole team will get into the platform on a Monday and work together in a draft to just plan out what they're going to do for that week. So this is all attendant. It's all related to the act of discovery. It's related to the process of litigation, but it's not discovery itself. But it's something that people spend a lot of time in, can be very frustrating for them when they don't have the right tools to do the job. We think we should provide those legal domain specific tools for all the things that they want to do beyond just saying, okay, look, you found the needles, now go export them and deal with them later, right? Deal with them in some other way. We think you should deal with them with the best possible set of tools. And obviously we'd like to be building those tools.
Yeah. I mean, could it ultimately be as robust as a full kind of case management platform?
Yeah, I would say, it's hard to think about, there's a kind of back office notion of case management, right? Yeah. The records and the invoicing. Yeah. And that's part of that. This is really around the lifeblood of the case, right? The evidence, but then where it goes from there and what you ultimately have to produce, right? So I've said this a bunch of different ways, but, in the past, but you can't just take the evidence you found, your hot docs and just go hand them to a judge and say, hey, judge, here's my hot docs. I win, here's 1,000 documents. You've got to actually make a compelling argument. And that requires a lot of coordination, right? And so, and collaboration with other people. So it's really around thinking about the management of a case rather than case management, if you know what I'm saying. But I think that is how we think about it at a broad scale. There's just so much value to be added to those components, as well as having, of course, the industry's best discovery, which we care a lot about as well.
Yeah. One of the other comments Jesse made that I would love to hear your thoughts on back when I talked to him in 2020, and that was the $62 million funding round at that time, was that he said, we're investing in this company. We're not betting on an acquisition. We're betting on it being on a path to go public. So is that what you're looking at? Is that what you're thinking at? I mean, do you see going public at some point?
Yeah. I think, look, one of the things I learned a long time ago is that the best companies, if you're going to be bought, the best companies are bought, not sold. No, we're never going to be making a company that we're hoping someone's going to buy. You put a lot of hopes and dreams in someone else solving your problems down the line, you're going to make a lot of short-sighted decisions, right? So we make every decision like it's ours to own forever. And that means we're building a company to last forever, right? On its own two legs, wherever that will take us. And so that, going public is a real viable outcome there for sure. And that's, I think how we've thought about building the company.
Yeah. When we talked 2 years ago, we spent a little bit of time talking about the ongoing debate, or at least then ongoing debate of on-premises versus cloud. Obviously, you launched in 2011 as a cloud-based platform, but I think even as recently as two years ago, there was still a lot of conversation about whether lawyers were going to transition to the cloud or not, or not all lawyers, but some lawyers anyway. What's happened since then? I mean, to what extent has that dialogue shifted as a result of the pandemic?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say without a doubt, the biggest shift is that it's just not a question of if now, it's a question of when. And the when is all over the place, to be clear.
Yeah.
But really everyone has some kind of strategy that involves the cloud. We did a survey earlier this year, I think, where we surveyed a whole bunch, hundreds of legal professionals, and 95% of them said, the cloud's the future. They all know they're going to get there eventually. It's just a matter of when. And so I think that is what's changed most significantly, is the realization that, as in every other industry, this is the fundamental infrastructure change for our industry. And there's many changes on top of this infrastructure, I'd argue, but this is a core one. And so for a lot of folks, it's just thinking about what their needs are now and what the opportunities are and what they value, right? In terms of the whatever capital expenditures they've made already for their infrastructure versus the increased rate of innovation in the cloud or improved security or availability, whatever it might be. Those are the questions people are asking now. But, we work with all kinds of clients, and even the most sophisticated ones now, are very cloud friendly. One of our clients is the U.S. Department of Justice, and they use Everlaw, and we're FedRAMP, but they use Everlaw in GovCloud, but they use Everlaw in the cloud, right? And so, you can imagine they are very strict about this stuff. So plenty, on the commercial side as well, plenty of clients, financial institutions, what have you, that use Everlaw in the cloud. So I think it's really a question of the maturity and the understanding of their internal security teams and so on, but then the broader strategic planning of, okay, when are we going to get there?
Yeah. So how has that impacted your business? How has that shift of attitude toward the cloud impacted your business since we spoke in 2019?
Well, I think it's gone well. There's still more work to do, as I said, because the when question is still the real question. It is about, even if they understand that it's the place they're going to go, now may not be the right time. So our job is to figure out whether it is the right time for them. If so, help them. And if not, say, look, we'll be here for you, right? But it's definitely made things easier. And I think it has put a cleaner emphasis on thinking about what kind of partner you want to have in the cloud, right? And so I think once you agree that, hey, I'm going to move there, you want to start thinking about, well, who's my partner going to be, right? Is it a technology that's been ported over from on-premises, or is it something that was born in the cloud, is scalable, all that other stuff? And that, I think, works in our favor as well at the moment.
Yeah. But you've seen significant growth over the last couple of years.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
What's that growth look like?
Yeah. So, I mean, we grew 80% year over year just in the last 12 months. And so I think that's been great. And we've seen, that kind of growth for quite a while now. So I think we feel pretty good about the trajectory. But of course, it's a big market, right? And the market, A, it's a big market. B, it's growing. The discovery market's growing. And C, I think we're also addressing needs outside of the discovery market. So I think there's just a lot of opportunity in front of us, but also that means a lot of work for us to do, right? And I'm excited, of course, to be able to execute against that.
Yeah. And when you say you're addressing needs outside the discovery market, I know you're used by a number of state attorneys generals. I think according to what your company says, it's all 50 state attorneys general use Everlaw. Is that the kind of use outside of the e-discovery market that you're talking about?
Oh, those clients do a ton of discovery. So they actually are some of our most sophisticated discovery users, often with multi-district, big matters. Certainly, I'll say, I'll characterize this in a couple of ways. So one is the tools I already mentioned about people who get value out of Everlaw beyond merely doing discovery, but also they do their work on Everlaw, and that's value, right? And I think we can provide that to folks, and that's meaningful for the business. But the other things are other use cases. So obviously, there's investigations, there's FOIA requests. In the UK, due to GDPR, and in Europe, there's these data subject access requests, DSARs. So there's lots of these different kinds of use cases. Additionally, for corporations, internal investigations. So there's a broadening kind of scope of things that are not all litigation focused, that are still need the same class of tools, right? That we can also meet those needs for.
Yeah. Something I read around the time of the announcement of this latest financing was a comment I think you made that you want to expand geographically as well as just expand your market generally. So what is that? How do you want to expand geographically?
Yeah. So that's a great question. I have to be a little coy about this. I will say that, so we have servers in the US, in Canada, in Australia, in Frankfurt, Germany, in London. So we have a bunch of deployments of Everlaw all over, and folks can use these deployments right now. They use these deployments right now to make sure that they're adhering to whatever local regulations there are around data. We have an office in London, and with a growing team there, and that's very exciting. And I think that's a natural opportunity to grow into the rest of Europe. But, we are definitely thinking about the whole world, and we think there's global need for this kind of tool.
Yeah. Why do you have to be coy? Just because there's stuff that hasn't been announced yet?
I would say mostly because there's stuff that we haven't figured out yet. We're doing a lot of homework, and I'm the kind of person that when I say I'm going to do something, I really, really want to do it. So I'm an engineer. I like making sure I back up whatever I'm saying with action. So I don't want to speak preemptively if our plans change.
Yeah. Something else you did this year was hold your first user conference. So why did you want to do that, and what do you think it accomplished?
Yeah, that was really great. It was really fun. Well, we wanted to do that because we thought we had a critical mass of users that would love to get to know each other a bit more and learn more about the platform, and it just felt like the right time to do that. Also, I would say internally as a company, we felt we had the resources to pull off a really good experience, right? Mm-hmm. And so that was it. I think it was just we hope we kind of had enough information that was broadly useful for folks, as well as Everlaw specific sessions and so on. So it was a hoot. And we were definitely excited to do that, and we're looking forward to doing something similar next year.
Yeah, you're going to do it in person?
I am hopeful. Yeah.
Yeah. So I said I wasn't going to ask you about your early days, but and I do encourage listeners to go back and listen to our other interview when you were on this show in 2019. But I wonder if you could just kind of recap kind of what the problem was that you saw back then that caused you to start this company, and then maybe talk about how far along you are in addressing that problem.
Yeah, and so that's a really great question. So the problem I was drawn to was just the technical problem of discovery. And so this was back in the late 2000s, and I was finishing up my PhD in computer science in grad school. So folks that don't know, I don't have a legal background. I'm not a lawyer. I don't have any lawyers in my family, but I am a technologist. I'm a computer scientist. Yeah. And so
from listening to you, you've learned a thing or two about law too, though.
Oh, certainly in the last 10 years, I'd like to think I've gained some domain expertise for sure. But would never want to, again, in that regard, overstep my area of expertise. So I could definitely talk to you about discovery, and I could definitely talk to you about tech, but I'm not going to be litigating in a courtroom, right? Yep. So back then, the exposure was a law firm needed a technical expert, and they came to the Berkeley CS PhD department looking for one, and my advisor put my name forward because I happened to know the things they needed, and I worked with them on a whim, and it was really on a whim at the time. I said, hey, this is going to be fun, a little extra money, why not? It ended up being really fascinating work, right, with very smart people and very deep technical problems, and high stakes, which I thought was kind of fun. And also, of course, at the time, the technology that they had available to them just wasn't that great. I mean, it wasn't really all that it could be to solve these very demanding technical needs. And so my thought process was just, look, knowing what I know about computer science, you could build something much better than what they had available at the time. And that was really exciting, right? I'm a product person. I love building product. I love...
this is your second startup. Right?
Yeah, second startup. I did actually do the other one between that experience and this one, but I love the idea of building something that people find useful. I also love the engineering and technical challenge. I love writing code, for instance. I don't get to do that anymore, but it was a great passion of mine and just really, really fun. So that was the impetus, is just saying, look, let's get hacking. So I quit my job at the time, started writing code in my bedroom, and was off to the races, really captivated by the kind of intellectual challenge of solving this hard technical problem discovery. And so a lot has changed since then, as you noted. So one thing I'll say is, of course, I like joking that things have come full circle. I started writing code in my bedroom. I'm back in my bedroom right now. So not by choice necessarily, but I hope we'll get back to some kind of in-person component soon. Yeah. But other than that, of course, a lot has changed, right? So I think the scope of and the ambition of what we're doing has increased a ton, right? I think the same vision is there. I think from very early on, like the idea for Story Builder and all that stuff is very, very early on. That seeing it manifest over time has been huge. Seeing the sophistication of the tool set we offer, the breadth that we offer is a ton bigger. I would say the bit of all though, for me, is moving away from the technical challenge being the main driver and motivator for me, which I still love, but it's not the primary motivator. For me at this scale, I think what I never expected early on is just the value of what we as a profession do, as this industry does, right? The value of supporting the rule of law, right? Of basing decisions on facts, right? And not on public opinion, right? And, that is incredibly powerful. And I think we've seen in the last several years just how valuable a service that is. And so in general, I'd say it's incredibly, I am so privileged to be part of this industry that, toils in obscurity by and large, right? Doing this thing to achieve justice, right? To actually resolve outcomes in civil society. But, it's an incredible achievement, right? It's a pillar of democracy, I think. And then for Everlaw in particular, it's also just, seeing the matters that have been on Everlaw, right? And reading about them in the headlines and knowing that even behind the scenes, we had a bit of a part to play in that. I think that's really rewarding. And so it's exciting.
Yeah.
I did not expect that going in, I'll tell you.
Yeah. So as the product person, what's the future of the product look like? I mean, we've talked a little bit about it, ways it can expand. I mean, is there anything more to that you have in sort of your vision for what this product is going to look like in 5 years or so?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'll just say you see us going to the right and going to the left, right? So going to the right of the EDRM with Story Builder, going to the left with legal holds. We're going to continue on both of those directions, right? So we don't think that there's any kind of limit there. We think following the data and following the human work product is essential. And then we also think there's a huge amount of depth we can add to the actual core component of finding those documents and building a story. There's so much more. When you think about the challenge, it's an amazing challenge. As I said, I was drawn to the technical challenge. I mean, as a nerd, I love this thing. Huge haystack, right?
Yeah.
Haystack is growing 10x bigger every year too, and you still got to find the same number of needles. And by the way, it's just a lot of different kinds of hay now, right? It's not just email, it's Slack chats and it's Zoom recordings. And that's a fascinating problem. So I think there's a lot we're going to be able to do in terms of more sophisticated ways to elevate interesting and important evidence and documents to our users, whether it's with artificial intelligence or data visualization or more tools to aid human review or who knows what. So I think all of those areas are very, very interesting. And I can go on the product, but there's a lot more stuff on the product there. But I'll just say that central meaty part, there's a ton to do.
Yeah. We talked earlier about the impact that the pandemic has had on driving lawyers toward the cloud, if not to the cloud. Have there been other impacts that you've seen from where you sit on your customers, on the legal tech industry more broadly, as a result of this pandemic, besides that, acceptance of the cloud?
Yeah. Well, I think, the cloud itself is kind of like a solution to a class of problems that people now have, right? So right. I think people are remote. You have to find a way to work together remotely. Yeah. And I think for many attorneys, that's still largely the case in some fashion. And I think this is just a really neat way to do that. But in general, they're probably seeing, of course, tons more Zoom meetings and so on. And that means the way you communicate is different. And, there's all the attendant changes. I'm sure you've read about this ad nauseum, but in the evolving workspace in the workplace where you sit by yourself, right? And if someone is uncalendared on your Zoom, you're not going to see them, right? That's a different kind of work style. So that's why we really push beyond just saying, hey, it's in the cloud. We really push, how do we help you work together with your colleagues more closely? Which means having a robust set of these tools that are purpose-built for what you're actually doing to work together, even if you're remote. And so, of course, there are things like, depositions we're hearing are much more, people went remote for depositions and they were like, wow, this is much easier than having to fly somewhere for a 2-hour meeting and fly back. Yeah. And carrying in boxes of documents, we just do this remotely. And we're seeing even as restrictions get relaxed, people are staying remote with depositions. They're saying, you know what, we can keep doing things this way. So we think there are going to be some fundamental shifts that way as well. But yeah, I do think, look, the number one thing absolutely is, look, how do we get software that's available no matter where you are? That's secure no matter where you are. And I think, coming back to that again, the cloud is done well. I would say the cloud is a fantastic solution.
Yeah. EJ, anything else that you'd like to say before we wrap up today?
I guess I'll do what I sometimes do is I'll put in a plug for our Everlaw for Good program, which is the component of Everlaw where we just give Everlaw away for free to folks who can't afford to use it as paying customers, who typically do things like pro bono work, who are nonprofits, investigative journalists, or educators. And so if you need the kind of tool that Everlaw is, if you're wading through lots of documents, you can apply to Everlaw for Good on our website and you can use it for free. So that's really motivating for us internally. We do think that while I was saying, I definitely support the rule of law, you got to recognize that the playing field isn't completely even, without a doubt. And so we hope that this does a little bit of evening the playing field for folks who need access to this kind of technology but can't get it. So it's called Everlaw for Good. You just Google it. You can submit an application. And so we have, I think, over 80 organizations now using us on that free tier.
Good for you. That's great of you to do that. Well, congratulations again on all your success over the last 2 years since we last talked, and especially so much has happened over the last year with you. So congratulations on all that, and thanks for coming back and telling us all about it. Appreciated it.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Bob. Really appreciate it as well, and it's great to chat.
Yeah. Stay well. Maybe I'll see you in New York.
I hope so.
Okay.
All right. Take care.
I've been speaking with AJ Shankar, founder and CEO of the e-discovery company Everlaw. Thanks to AJ for taking the time to be with us today. What are your thoughts on today's show? Share them by tweeting us at LawNext Podcast. LawNext is produced, engineered, and edited by Populous Radio. I'm your host, Bob Ambrogi. I hope you'll join us again next time for another episode of LawNext.